not a one type of intelligence type being, but that we have three intelligences. We have a somatic intelligence, which is our bodies, our sensations, where our intuition lives. We have an emotional intelligence that I would call the heart, and even emotions are part of it, feelings are part of it, and those are slightly different. And a kind of an energetic capacity of perception that lives in the heart space and emanates from the heart. And then, of course, we have our minds. But here in the West, we tend to the mind a lot, and we get very disconnected from our emotions and from our embodied experience of the world, especially as we get older, and education does that to us.
Hello, and welcome to all of you beautiful souls tuning in today to the Heart of the Soul podcast. Earthly Nova on YouTube. My name is Amana, and I am so happy that you're here. This is a space where we remember what it means to be wild women walking upon this earth, navigating the ebbs and flows of change, honoring each other's differences, and connecting about that which unites us. Together, we practice using our voices in the ancient ritual of storytelling, sharing our stories of birth, life, and death, and celebrating how we and they change across time. I hope that soaking in these stories will leave you feeling inspired, connected, and more alive in your own beautiful body and unique life. Hello. I have Dr. Simona Weik here with me today. I met her when I was at Ghost Ranch with Kimberly Ann Johnson this last December, which was just a really beautiful experience. And I'm excited to have her here today for a little Minisode, where we're going to talk a little bit about the heroine's journey and this beautiful offering that she has out in the world right now. And yeah, I would love for you to just, introduce yourself for a moment in whatever way feels good. And then we can talk more to the heroine.
Thanks, Amana. Thank you for having me. Let's see. I guess what I want to share is that I was born in Romania in Eastern Europe, and moved to the United States when I was 14 with my whole family. And so in many ways, I'm a third culture person. And the experience of living almost like these two halves of life in these two very, very different places informs a lot of the work that I do in the world, which right now my work is in the healing arts, a sort of a constellation of different things, like trauma resolution through internal family systems and narrative therapies and some somatic work mixed in there, and spiritual companionship. But also I just feel like I hold this lens that comes from maybe not quite feeling full belonging in one culture or the other, in the American or the Romanian culture now. And I want to mention that, because that can sometimes get lost, because it's hard to tell that I'm from somewhere else. Yeah, I think that's all maybe I want to say for now.
Wonderful. Yeah. I'm glad that you shared that. It is an important thing to know of you and how that, has shaped the woman that you are today. So thank you for sharing that. I really enjoyed. So I got to join part 2 live of this heroine's journey for you. And then I also got to watch the replay of the teaching of the first part. And both are like, yeah, such beautiful, impactful like layers that you weave in this spiral. And I loved how you spoke to the beginning about, I know you're an academic, and I also was like in that world of college and schooling for a period of time myself,
Yeah.
and very much grew up in the focus of, like the mind and that type of intelligence. And I love how in the beginning you spoke to the way that you teach like from and to like 3 different energy centers and intelligences, and wonder if maybe you could share a little bit about that here.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That's such a lovely question. Yeah, so yes, so my background is quite academic. I majored in English and literature and creative writing and philosophy, and pursued that all the way to the doctoral level, and taught at the college and university level throughout getting my education. And I thought that was going to be my path. I thought that my path was going to be being a professor and just doing the whole tenure track thing. And it came to a place, and in fact, it's one of what I consider one of the iterations of how this typology of the heroine's journey of healing the feminine played out in my life. But I got to a point where about a year after I finished my doctorate, I knew, and I had actually 2 job offers on the table that were the things that I thought that I wanted so much, and knew that actually my time in academia in that particular way and iteration had ended. And it was, I mean, in many ways, it was very disillusioning and scary and all of that. But all that to say is what, and maybe this will connect later with just a little bit of how this journey unfolds, if you will. But yeah, what I felt at that time, and I didn't necessarily know that I was going to go into this sort of world of the healing arts and of somatic integration, and of kind of bringing all of that academic work, which is actually what I'm doing now in a sense, or at least some of it, into a place of connection and dialogue and interweaving with the body and with the emotional body, the soma and the emotional body. But yeah, essentially that's what I've discovered along the way as I've moved towards being in these other spaces where I get to work with people's stories and traumas and bodies on a regular basis. And so what I've discovered along the way is that we are 3, not a one type of intelligence type being, but that we have 3 intelligences. We have a somatic intelligence, which is our bodies, our sensations, where our intuition lives. We have an emotional intelligence that I would call the heart, and even emotions are part of it, feelings are part of it, and those are slightly different. And a kind of an energetic capacity of perception that lives in the heart space and emanates from the heart. And then, of course, we have our minds. But here in the West, we tend to the mind a lot, and we get very disconnected from our emotions and from our embodied experience of the world, especially as we get older, and education does that to us. And so, yeah, I think it's felt like such an important piece for me to bring together all of these 3 intelligences, if you will, in the way that I present material, but honestly, in just the way that I move and live in the world, first and foremost, and then in the way that I do my work, because I feel like it honors the fullness of our humanity. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. And it really, when I heard you speak to that today, it just struck me in another way. And not, I mean, I have been exploring the different centers and intelligences in my life and learning about them, but to have you speak to it in just that succinct way, it just brought something together for me in a way that it hadn't been before. So I'm just grateful for that, and also wanted other people to have more awareness of that, because I don't feel like we have a real awareness of intelligences other than our mind, like you said, in this Western world, because we're so focused on mind intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. I read this, I, I think it was this study that came from this neurobiologist who was trying to create a little bit of a sense of like the processing power of our body intelligence and our intuition and our emotions sort of compared to the brain, or the mind, the brain and the mind, and the intersection between brain and mind. And he talked about how if the brain processes information at like 40 megabits per second, he said the body processes reality at about like 2 billion megabits per second. And
Wow.
so there's this like incredible capacity in our bodies and in the way that emotions and feelings live, or at least partially live in the body. They're not just that. I do think there are a little bit of a different energy, but also are rooted in sensation that gives us access to so much more knowing. And so often I think we are very limited if we only use the intelligence of the mind. And so that was really, really striking to me and really beautiful. And yeah, it's how I want to live, and it's how I want other people to feel like they can have access to that as well in themselves.
Yes, well, you're teaching some of these different skills that, like in the academia that I participated in, like modern school or colonized education, it was definitely focused mostly on the brain and not knowing my body or my emotions. And so I think it's so beautiful that you teach to that and share that and embody that. And I would love to hear more about how this heroine's journey came to you and this creation. And I love, yeah, just the way that you speak about it and the different phases of the journey and why it's important, especially for like the heroine in this. You shared about the current patriarchy that we are experiencing, and that it's an expression of toxic masculinity, I think is how you described it, and just how it's important for, I feel like, especially for women and girls, to have this this archetype or this figure to look towards that's not that's female rather than male.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the heroine's journey, and I do agree, and I think in many ways, like I want to transmit and teach to males and females and non-binary folks, and it's not about that. I start even by saying that we hold masculine and feminine energies inside of us, regardless of our gender expression or our biology. Although, of course, we can't also ignore what our biology and our physiology says. But we do have access to both of those energies in different configurations inside of us. And I think as girls and women in a patriarchally dominated culture, we very much need typologies and maps that are for the specificity of the feminine journey, which is different from the masculine journey. And, when we have this typology from Joseph Campbell, who, I mean, in a sense, he synthesized the wisdom of so many different cultures across time and across, geography, in giving us the hero's journey. And I think it's helpful and it's really brilliant in many ways. And I think, again, regardless of how you identify, you will do a hero's journey too. It's a deeply archetypal human thing. However, there was never, up until Maureen Murdoch was actually a student of Joseph Campbell's, asked about, what about the feminine? Doesn't the feminine get a journey? And his response was, the feminine is what we're all trying to get to, and there is no journey. Which to her felt very invalidating in a way, because the feminine, especially, with these 7,000 plus years of this dominant patriarchal culture that's spread throughout the globe, maybe not in every single recess of the globe, but it's almost everywhere in some sense. Right. The feminine has needed also to, in a sense, to feel its validity and to feel and to be recognized as a specific kind of archetypal experience. And so I think the map is really useful. I think we do this even without the map. And part of what I say is, like, sometimes having a map or understanding that there is this kind of collective way in which people do get to experience the sort of healing of the feminine journey as well as a masculine journey, is just really, it's really helpful for the parts of the journey that feel incredibly isolating or frightening or destabilizing, etc., etc. So I probably, and I also feel like, because this does move in this very cyclical way, and it's like a spiral. It's not linear. The hero's journey is far more linear. So because of that, I think we can run these different iterations of it in at different times in our life, with different aspects of our life. I don't think it's like a one and done. And it's really about, again, just healing the feminine energies within us, the feminine within us, because it has been suppressed and oppressed. And we have lived in a world where, because of that imbalance between the masculine and the feminine, the masculine has turned toxic. And we've even kind of lost a sense of what healthy masculinity is in a lot of cases, because the masculine without the feminine and their capacity to harmonize and intertwine and create something new, like birth something new together. And again, I'm speaking very archetypally here. Without that, we have the kind of imbalances that we see today, and the kind of isms that we might see today in a culture of domination, a culture of oppression. I mean, you named education being colonized. That's one example. We can look at capitalism. We can look at, the way that this plays out, even at the very deeply personal level of how many people feel exhausted and burnt out and disillusioned and depressed. And that's because they've lost contact with the feminine, which is so much more about being versus doing, right? About the internal rather than the external, which is where the masculine energies are focused. It's about rest and cycles and rhythms and the value inherent in being versus value being attributed based on achievement, right? And this is where we've seen some,
like the doing versus the being, kind of, and
and
the ways that I don't know if do you know Dr. Sophie Brock? She's a
I've
motherhood
heard of
studies
her.
sociologist.
Yes.
I love her podcast and the way that she also speaks similarly to you of just like the unvalued work of mothering, like the unpaid work of mothering, and how um, that we're also like judged sort of like you spoke to in your first segment of whether we choose to stay at home and do that work or like go do a job outside of the home that's paid work it's like people are judging us either one that we choose, and it's like you can't win. And then
Yes.
and where do we like how does that support us? And it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Because also the way in which, and so sometimes I feel like patriarchy has lost its meaning, and I'm trying to use the term less. So I've been calling it like a culture of domination.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's but it's predicated on hierarchy and on assigning value across a spectrum where certain things are more valuable, certain people are considered more valuable, whether it's like based on class or race or etc. So that's inside this culture of domination. It's built
Mm-hmm.
into it. And the feminine comes along and says, actually, no, like being is valuable. Simply that. Human beings are valuable. And however we get to express our humanity is inherently valuable in itself because it emanates from our sense of being. And it erases hierarchy, right? It introduces like sharing of power and cooperation and multiplicity that isn't threatening, right? Whereas a lot of times what we have in patriarchy or this more like toxic masculine and dominant culture is that the more we look like each other, the more we share the exact same values, et cetera, et cetera. It's like the better things are, but that's actually not true. So within the feminine, there's a lot of room for
Mm-hmm.
diversity and multiplicity too, without assigning more value to one over another.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing for kind of like we see in nature, like just allowing for all the beauty of expression. Even just in like forms of flowers and trees and one isn't better than the other, right? It's like each
No,
one
like
has
all
its
the all right, does that also like speak to like binaries and polarizing things in that same way? We're saying this is good and this is bad.
yes.
And that's more of the try not to say masculine, patriarchal, but what was the term that you used? Dominating, like sort of the
Domination.
domination, whereas more of the like feminine is that, yeah, like ability to hold the paradox or for the both and. Is that,
Yes.
am I
Yeah,
understanding
a
that right?
hundred
Okay.
percent. Yes, and I talk a little bit about that in my first lecture too, because there's these really beautiful kind of um there's various theories out there, in like spiral dynamics. I talk a little bit about it. From there's a French philosopher that I love. His name is Jean Gebser, who talks about the evolution of human consciousness. And we have been inside. So this is what's coincided with, let's say, the domination paradigm. It's like a very mental, rational, um, privileging the mind, very binary way of thinking. And it's not that that didn't help us in some ways or that it doesn't have its value. Again, we're not tossing it
Sure.
because the feminine it's valuable, right? But when we do live in a world that constantly divides, right, and assigns value, like this is good, this is bad, this is and we're inside the binary, like you just said. And we see it in our politics right now here in the United States, and it's been really, really tough. um yeah, so it's like the feminine comes in, exactly, it's what you said. It's almost like the next level of consciousness that these different sociologists and philosophers and theorists are noticing, that's emerging, which is the capacity to, it's called the integrative level of consciousness. And it's about the capacity to hold paradox, and the capacity
Right.
to say, no, actually things don't have to be polarized, and they don't have to live on a binary. There's complexity and they can be integrated.
Mm.
And by integrate, I don't necessarily mean they have to merge with each other. They can just harmonize with each other. It's like a beautiful dance.
I love that. I've never heard that term. That's, yeah, so perfect.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what are you hoping that people will take away from or unearth or uncover in this exploration of the heroine's journey?
Yeah. Oh. Hmm. I love that question, because I think there is a lot of hope in me, and there is a lot of desire to share this from a place of like, this has been incredibly transformative to my life. And again, it's not whether you know the map or not. It's more of the idea of like reconnecting with the feminine is what I'm hoping to invite people into. Because again, in reconnecting with the feminine, we get to come back to our bodies, and we get to make, hopefully untangle, these are some of the parts of the journey, untangle from the dominant culture in a way that can return us to our sort of like our deepest and most authentic self. First, to come to know who we are, right? To even enter a space where we can discover who that person on the inside is, outside of all the messaging and all the pressures and all the standards that have been imposed on us because of the dominant culture and what it considers important, et cetera, et cetera. But to come to an authentic place of being, and I know that you know all about that in many ways, because I feel like that's so much a part of your work, but an authentic place of being embodied, connected to our spirituality, to our emotions, and from there to begin to build externally, or to manifest things externally that are actual true expressions of who we are, of our artistry and of our desires and of our passion and of our the things that move us, the places where we are gifted, that make us come alive. Not just the things that we're told we have to do in order to be a valuable person. But again, to recognize I'm already valuable. And then in discovering the uniqueness of each of our beings, then to ask, how do I get to bring that forth into the world? And how does it connect with the beautiful work that other people are putting in the world, or the beautiful art that other people are putting in the, you know what I mean? And so I think that's my hope, because that's what the feminine can do. That's what the feminine did for me. Even just to get to do this with you right now, or even just to teach the heroine's journey outside of academia is like, as like a highly intellectualized typology. To actually get to create a space where we can do a meditation, we can move our bodies, we can have dialogue. And for me too, it's like, this is one of those the fruit of this journey, if you will, a kind of a reimagination of what's possible, that touches so much more of me and is an expression of so much more of me, versus just like, okay, I have this intellectual capacity and I can go and do this here in these settings, sanctioned by, men with elbow patches on their suits. Or I can just kind of go out here and create a space all on my own and figure out how to bring forth that which is inside of me.
Yes, bringing through like your own source and creatrix and creativity. And I really just love your energy. I love that you incorporate like storytelling from your own life in your teachings as well. I can speak to the first two segments of this, and the third one is upcoming. You'll let us know when it is happening. But in these first two, I really, I appreciated it. Gave me some new language, some new knowing, some like validation of like experiences that I have had. Like, you know, you spoke to the academia experience, and I can definitely, like, there are some spirals within my own story where I went towards this goal of getting this degree, and then, you know, I get the degree, and then it, you know, but it doesn't bring me the fulfillment, and it doesn't provide the lifestyle that I want to live, or, you know, for my true essence and who I am. And that's always evolving and shifting and changing, but it's still, I'm grateful for these two parts that I have gotten to experience with you so far. And like I said, the way that it brings this, it is helping me to step more into the not aligning with like the status quo, or the like, the expectation of what society or my parents have put on me. Like, this has been like a journey for me, especially like in my late 30s. But again, the container that you created, where it's okay. You want to turn on the light? Yeah.
We'll turn on the light here in just a second. I'm sorry. This just went off. Yeah, keep going, Amana.
But I love that you've created this container for the exploration of that, and of like my own stories, and also to hear other people's stories, because I just feel like we gain so much from other people's stories, and the way that you're able to put into perspective like the experiences that I've had growing up, or, you know, in these 40 years that I've gathered, some of the experiences that I've had in this dominant culture, or dominated. I'm trying to use the language you were using, but I'm not remembering it correctly. But and so it has helped me to like find myself within that, almost within my own story in a new way, and understand why I might have chosen certain paths in my life. So thank you. And I look forward to participating in the third segment of this heroine's journey. And I would love for you to share with people when that is and how they can join. And I know that you have a long wait list for people to work with you one-on-one, but where people could sign up for that if they want to. And then I know you'll have opportunities in the future for group work and group learning and exploration.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for everything that you've shared. Thank you. It just feels so good to hear where this is connecting for people. And I think it is a really powerful thing when we can make meaning of our lives, whether it's in retrospect or even sometimes in the moment, without imposing maybe too much meaning or too much structure on it, but still this capacity to be able to, because again, storytelling, right, is much more of like a spiral. It's a much more of a feminine form than, let's say, like a very linear critical essay. And so I think, like for us to be able to reflect on our lives and our stories, and then to bring our stories forth through language, or sometimes through making art. I feel like that's a really powerful way, whether it's visually or poetry. So I love hearing that, because I do think in many ways our impulse as a race of human beings is to make meaning of our lives. And there's something really beautiful about that. And when we get to do that collectively, that's very feminine and very healing. And so just really grateful hearing that from you. And yes, okay, so the third part of this is going to be Friday. Let me just look at my calendar here, because I had this all in my head, but who knows? So it will be Friday, May 26th, and it will be at 12:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Pacific time. So 12:30 p.m. Eastern time, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. All of that will be posted on my site, which is just simonaweik.com, and you'll probably
I'll have
have
the link
that
in the show notes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a page that can be very easily found, just right, takes you right to the heroine's journey. So I'll have that information. People can sign up and receive the recordings for these first two parts, and then come live for the third one, or again get the recording, of the third part. And yeah, I think so. I do have a practice where I am doing quite a bit of one-on-one work with clients, and do have a waiting list. And my one-on-one work just kind of spans what I mentioned a little bit earlier, as far as trauma resolution through modalities like internal family systems, which has just been such a healing modality in my own life. And I have a whole interview and teaching that I did for the Shift Network that talks more about IFS and kind of what IFS does and how it quote unquote works, because it is very feminine and very mysterious, and deals with the integration of the parts to this core self energy and an essence. But yeah, my hope is also, because as you know, because you also do one-on-one work with people, we only have so much capacity. For the one-on-ones, my desire is to continue to expand into group work. And so even with this, I'm actually currently 8 months pregnant and going on maternity leave sometime in June, end of June, when my second daughter will be born, whenever. We'll see. And so I'm gonna take some time off, and then when I return to work in the fall, my desire is to offer this as a course. So this was a little bit of like a appetizer, introduction, amuse bouche, just to kind of, one, it felt really important to do it in this season of life. I'm not entirely sure why, but I just followed the intuition and the impulse. But it's also shown me how we've only been able to do so much in the space of these three get-togethers, if you will, these three gatherings, and that there is so much deeper work that's available to us as we move through the spiral. And so my hope is to create some containers, not very big, like 10, 12, and initially I just want to offer it to women, but like 10, 12 women, and we can move through the journey. And then I want to be able to weave all these other modalities in. So we do more embodiment work, more storytelling, more art, just more of everything.
Wonderful.
And I can get deeper into teaching too. So that would be an example of some of the things that are forthcoming. And then we'll see. I'm in this process of discovery and creation myself. So I don't fully know, but what I do know is that I would like to offer more courses and more just group experiences since the one-on-one capacity. Well, yeah.
Yes. Is there anything else you'd like to say or share before we stop recording here?
I don't think so. I think this was just such a lovely space, and I just want to thank you for having me on your gorgeous and insightful podcast. So
lovely.
I appreciate you.
I so appreciate you. Yes. Oh, me too. Oh, I can't wait to see you. Thank you so much.
Can't wait to see you in person. I know.
Yes. Thank you for tuning in today to the Heart of the Soul. If you loved the podcast, I would be so grateful if you would choose to subscribe, rate, review, or share the show. If you feel aligned with me and my energy, if you are wanting to unearth your wild inner knowing, birth your baby wild and free, navigate the medical system, move through grief, receive an intuitive mediumship reading, or debrief and integrate a traumatic birth experience, I support women just like you all over the world. This is absolutely my soul work to support and encourage other women from womb to tomb. And working with my clients, I have witnessed women claim their wild, place and hold new boundaries with loved ones, and live more fully unto themselves. In Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, she says, "Wild woman is an endangered species. We have to become protectionists. We have to be the ones to give birth to more and more wild women, both within ourselves, but also in our daughters and our nieces and our granddaughters, and all women that we can engender with this life-fulfilling and life-giving spirit. We are the new generation of wild women." I believe that women claiming their sovereignty and remembering their wild will truly transform the world. To learn more or book your free connection call, go to my website, www.birthingnova.love. I would just love to connect with you. Until next time, remember, be brave, be love, be wild, be you, and be the change that you seek for yourself and for the generations to come.